Welcome back to the Virtuoso tutorial series. Last time we learned how to create interactable objects and we made this CO2 filter that we're using for our space station repair simulator. In this lesson we're going to expand on what we've learned to create our first interaction area and our first complete interaction. We'll be building a CO2 filter box and we'll be setting up an interaction so that we can take our filter and place it into the box. It's simple, but it'll provide us with a good overview of the core concepts of Virtuoso. So to start building our first interaction, we're going to grab this CO2 scrubber box prefab from the Tutorial Assets Prefabs Space Station folder and drag it into the scene. Reset the position so that it's easy for you to reach. And you may find as you're testing that you need to move this around a little bit to get it into a comfortable position, and that is totally fine. The next thing we're going to do is set up a collider and an interaction area on this object. An interaction area is a script component that allows us to trigger events based on things that other things are doing in a particular area. So for example, with the basic interaction area, we can have it trigger events when an object enters or leaves the interaction area or is activated inside the interaction area. So our first step is going to be to add a box collider. So for this interaction area to work properly, we need to set isTrigger to true. Once we have the box collider on here, we're going to want to scale the whole thing down so that it fills this empty space on the front of the CO2 filter box. And again, just like last time, I highly recommend using the physics debugger as it makes it a whole lot easier to see what you're doing here. Okay, great. Our next step is to add the interaction area component. So the way that you code a lot of interactions in Virtuoso is using what we call reactions and reactors. Reactions are basically small snippets of code that let you do useful things like move an object, scale an object, snap an object to a certain position, play an animation, that sort of thing. A reactor is a component that allows you to link up events to reactions. In this interaction, we want to simulate being able to take this CO2 filter and place it in this box. So we're going to use what's called a snap reaction to hold this object in place once the object has been placed inside this interaction area. So to start to do that, I'm going to add a reactor component. Next, I'm going to drag this interaction area into this event sender field on the reactor component. So you'll see we get a little error here that says no reactions are currently in the scene. That's perfectly normal. So let's actually go ahead and set up one of these. So I'm going to create an empty child object of the scrubber box, and I'm going to call this snap point. Oops, spelled that a little wrong. Next, I'm going to add a snap reaction. We're also going to add a rigid body, set it to isKinematic so that it doesn't move on its own, and then we're going to add a fixed joint. Basically, these three components are going to work together to hold this object in place. So now if we go back to the CO2 scrubber box, you'll see that it's populated itself with these different events. Each of these events are sent by the interaction area. All we need to do to tie an event to a reaction is to expand the event, press the plus sign, and then drag in the object with the reaction on it from the scene. So now we should be good to go with this interaction. So let's give it a play and see how it performs. So now that we've completed that, you should be able to see this interaction at work by grabbing the CO2 filter and placing it in the box. As simple as that. As you can see, by carefully combining interactable objects, interaction areas, reactions, and reactors, you can create a lot of naturalistic behavior in your simulations. In the next lesson, we'll be expanding on what we learned here in order to create a welder that we can use in our space station training simulator.